Welcome to the Music Wide Open podcast
The place for an honest and thought-provoking conversation
about music,
business,
life,
technology,
and the future,
for curious music enthusiasts.
and musicians seeking personal growth. I'm Ingolf Wunder.
And I am Paulina Wunder. Celebrities, stars, influencers, self-proclaimed specialists and trendsetters. Every day we are exposed to an enormous amount of information, so-called content, created to occupy our mind for 1 minute. Then we scroll down to the next person, next picture, next opinion, next video, next music clip. Every slightly different, yet almost the same. The important things become watered down for the need of quick entertainment and high clickability. There is so much of everything that our senses often shut down. Our focus decreases or simply shifts to what each of us individually finds true. Whether it's true or not, this is often more a matter of personal opinion than objective reality. But what's objectively true is that due to this excessive amount of information and the excessive number of so-called stars and personalities, it becomes more and more difficult to identify real value, real high quality, real talent, real stars. One would like to ask, what is fame nowadays? Or shall we rather ask, are we at the end of fame? This is what we are going to discuss today, and what it means for musicians, classical musicians. Are we at the end of fame?
Well, even if you speak to people familiar with pop circles, which pop is usually 20 years ahead in terms of systems and concepts to classical music, one hears that the fame to not fame time span is much, much shorter now than it was in the past. And also fame used to mean something different. It was earned over a lifetime.
For musicians?
Yes, correct. But it was earned over a lifetime, reserved for those with extraordinary talent and depth, if you will, with, real personal voice, storytelling abilities, and I would even say some kind of spiritual layer that is on top of the music. In the classical space, we talk about people like Hoffmann, Horowitz, Toscanini, Kleiber, Rubinstein. But it's also applicable, of course, to figures like Frank Sinatra, Queen, Art Tatum in jazz, Oscar Peterson, people like this. And this doesn't mean that, again, the technical ability or how quick people play or how much people play decreased or got worse. Absolutely not. But as I said, this kind of spiritual layer definitely got sort of diminished.
That is correct, but let's maybe talk why it got diminished. Here, probably the biggest role plays technology and the social media alone. Social media plays an important role, probably the most important currently, much more important than TV, radio, or press. And by the way, TV, radio, and press, they are as well advertising their channels via social media and the content.
It gets all merged.
And it gets all merged, correct. And then the social media actually, or rather the algorithms of social media, decide what is important, what is visible, and how much a user actually sees.
Exactly. Also, let's not forget, these algorithms are constantly adjusted as to also how people change. And people, it's like a cycle, because people change because of those algorithms that give short-term reward and more and more and more and shorter just to get the kick. But this also changes the humans.
Well, I think that still a lot of people are not aware of the fact that the algorithms are very personalized. So they personalized your scrolling experience according to each person's habits and preferences. which gives us the illusory feeling that others see and experience the same content as we do. This effectively places every one of us in our own bubble.
That's correct. When I was speaking about the spiritual layer before, then there's definitely an issue for music because these algorithms are automated, right?
Yes.
They're reading data that they can actually read, and therefore they're focusing on crude metrics, like how long you look at a certain thing, how long you
don't have to even click on it, you just look at it.
Exactly, or your hand movement or mouse movement or whatever. Sometimes even your eye
that depends movement. On the platform. Yes,
but still these are crude things, right? So they are not measuring the musical value because they cannot even yet read that out, because people don't care about that. So in a ideal world, this personalization per se...
Excuse me, I would like to interrupt. People do care, those that listen to, but those ones that are creating the algorithms, they don't necessarily care which interpretation of this or the other piece is better.
Yeah, exactly. So, but even technically, we are doing that work to make such things possible, but we know where the state of the art is, and it's not there yet that this can be read out in these the mainstream platforms like Facebook, Instagram, etc. And this is a problem because it gets diminished, and therefore they're reading and adjusting algorithm and content delivery only to kind of, let's call it, primitive metrics.
Yeah, and that's why it's difficult to compete in a world where stupid videos get 1000% higher reach than beautifully played nocturne or any other piece. It's quite challenging for musicians, for classical musicians I would say especially, because since they play roughly the same pieces, these algorithms as well make it actually impossible for many people even to hear whatever they post in terms of music, because the audio is being cut
because of
copyrights. So you're accused of actually stealing someone's property, although this is you playing your instrument.
And this is exactly because of these primitive metrics that they measure. And also one more result of these crude metrics is that playing styles sort of get homogenized. But not because the algorithm makes people play the same, but because of listening habits, and because of this, that you constantly see the same things sort of, makes also artists play or let's say if they go for competitions, or if they go for, they want to be chosen, or they want to make it, and they copy people who made it. And this cycle made music, classical music, just much more homogenized than it should be. Because in the past, when you said, or when people said, and honestly, I heard Rubinstein play this Beethoven sonata in a different or completely distinct way, nothing I've ever heard like this. You cannot even say that anymore, because let alone that today you usually say the guy on Instagram played the piano. But even if you go further, and if you go, you don't even have these differences anymore. And this is because of the time spans, attention spans, not only attention spans, because...
Well, attention span, actually, this is something very interesting, because I think it plays as well a crucial role why this fame subject is so fragile nowadays.
Yeah.
Because they say the current average human attention span is approximately 8.25 seconds, which has decreased over the last years terribly. And the funny thing is, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I heard it, that this figure is less than the average attention span of a goldfish, which is around 9 seconds. So, but yet again here, there was a study made as well. This is probably as well due to the fact that we spent awful lot of time on our mobile devices, on iPads, iPhones, phones, smartphones, all these things. And they say the average adult checks, wait for it, their phone 58 times a day. So this
Only.
well,
feels more.
it contributes to this fragmented focus because you're constantly distracted.
Yeah. Well, will play devil's advocate, and people will say, okay, the attention span. There are studies, we know how studies are being created sometimes. Then people say, okay, but much more people listen to 3-hour podcasts.
But the attention span is measured by this, how long you can focus on one thought.
Exactly, and I
on.
just wanted to say, I mean, of course, we don't know the opening numbers or view numbers on platforms of 3-hour podcast. Doesn't mean that people actually stay there 3 hours and listen to it.
View, we know that one view on YouTube is at least 30 seconds or more, but it means 30 seconds can be one view.
Correct, yeah. No, I mean, just the actual numbers we don't have, just the platforms itself have it, and probably they will not reveal that. But anyway, there is definitely the split going on that probably some people, it's always like that, right? I mean, if one extreme goes in one direction, the other extreme goes in the other direction, that there are people who can actually hold the focus long. But again, we are talking here about spoken podcast and not 3 hours of music listening. There's
true.
Of course a difference to be made.
I would say such outliers, there are there.
But very few, yeah.
But even more demanding consumers often fall into this trap of instant gratification, let's call it this way, because it's fun. We all get used to it.
Yeah.
And the more we get used to it, the more challenging it is to get impressed by anything.
That's right. That would be actually a nice study. I mean, for sure has been done. Or not. But how, well, definitely what we know from our work is that the actual impact on brains, let's call it, is in the long run. That means that if you have changes over 15 minutes or 30 minutes, then the brain is much more, actually gets much more out of this value. Many people don't know that. That's why classical music, actually played the right way and also interpreted the right way, gives these sort of sensations that people that listen to 30-second clips will never experience. But that's a different topic.
That is a different topic. I feel that people are not after sensation. People are looking for quick entertainment, and this is what causes the problem, because the value of the content is not necessarily determined by its real quality, but by the popularity. And this one is determined by the algorithms. So it's a vicious circle.
Yes, it's about the quick fixes, in a way. And this is also putting pressure on artists, because they have to create more content, of course, because you think you have to create more because there's so much, right? And there's simply not, the time to have this fine grain level matured. And this is a part why it's kind of crude and quick and funny or not funny. That's basically, the metric.
That's why the kids and cats have probably the highest clickability rate.
Yeah, because that comes from the reptile brain, most probably.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this. This will not be the most elegant example, but let me say it. Some time ago in our private conversations, we were talking about some classical musician's video that got some more views. I don't remember if that was 1,000, 10,000 or 100,000. It's not important here. To which you reacted like, yes, but the farting cat on YouTube has 1 million views probably. And I checked that afterwards, and you were not right here. It has 8 million views. So this is where we are, unfortunately. And then classical musicians who are either posting something on social media, they are counting with this, that they will be seen and their content, again, will be liked and promoted or shared, are getting discouraged or even frustrated because these algorithms that decide that they are actually worse than a farting cat, I'm sorry to say that, and they get a couple of views, maybe, on a good day, or a little bit more if it's an excellent day, it's really very hard to stay in anybody's mind.
And I imagine some classical musicians are having a problem with not classical listeners, let's call a work of music a song. But we are living in times where it's actually content and everything is the same anyway.
Absolutely. And for the social media creators, I mean the creators of the social media platforms, so the companies who are actually ruling the current landscape of entertainment, which, by the way, classical music is part of it, whether classical musicians like to see themselves as entertainers or not, they are. These social media creators are actually deciding about the status, fame, and importance of classical musicians as well.
Exactly. And there are also something triggers like followers versus fans. This is not the same.
That's true.
People tend to confuse this.
Everything is exaggerated now.
It's like, you know, musicians may have millions of followers, but still lack really deep invested fans, right? I mean, but that has to do with, I think, the spiritual layer that
and in classical music, it's basically almost not visible in comparison to other genres like pop.
Yeah, but this is also because of this homogenized delivery of music, let's call it this way, because then simply it's very easy to interchange. If this, let's say, fine-grained layer that needs to be there in music, and even if people are not aware that it exists, many people also in the past were not aware that this exists, but it was there, and this has an effect on how much as a fan you really adore that person because this special something is there. Now, of course, younger generation will say now, oh, my beloved artist has that too. But we know for a fact that it's not really true.
But this is because the quality is being mixed up with popularity. Yes. And the success is confused with popularity. So
yes, and that we humans have a wonderful gift of imagining almost anything.
That's true.
And convincing ourselves that something that is not existing is actually existing.
That is another thing. And then, of course, big followers base means for many, either record labels or companies, or this is not only, by the way, about musicians only, but as well, actors have the same thing. If you have a bigger follower base, it means for whoever wants to hire you for a movie that you're better, because immediately this information about the new movie or about the new CD or whatever else, depending what's your profession, goes to a bigger number of people. So in the end, you as a musician or an artist, generally speaking, you're a product, nothing else.
Exactly. I mean, you always were, of course, but due to the fact that followers isn't the same as fans, but for those who just seek eyeballs to sell a product, it's still tempting, and that's why those people with a lot of followers still have more success.
Yeah, of course.
It doesn't matter what they do, right?
Well, as a musician, actually, it doesn't matter really how you play, because you will get more followers if you have a big décolleté and a very nice high-resolution picture that portrays this décolleté, rather than a video that is maybe a lower resolution, but someone plays or sings beautifully.
Yeah. And this is also because of technology, because of the let's call it, I know those people who really know will excuse my stupid wording, but the development of the metaverse in its multiple forms. That's why it's favored to have nicely looking content, because the algorithms can, or the models can better scan what's on the picture.
And learn from it.
Yes, and again, the crude metrics, because they want to create first the crude thing before they go into the fine grain. But in this technological development to metaverse or
virtual reality,
to the virtual realities, there is a danger that this fine grain, which actually makes the music and which every human is equipped to sense, but which we are losing, that this is being sacrificed in the strain of development, because you need to, if you develop anything, you need to first go crude and then go fine. Yeah. But if you too long go only the crude metrics, and that fine grain is lost altogether, then you don't have anything anymore than people who are still in the Stone Age, and we have to get fine-grained again, which we probably will, but it will take 100 years.
Or more. Yes, and the fact that in that case, again, we are talking about mostly classical musicians, they want to make it, especially the younger ones, they want to make it without understanding how this new technological world really works. They try to sort of fit into the system of classical music. So to say the right things, to play the same way. That's why we end up with not only often generic, unfortunately, playing, but as well generic interviews. What is, in my opinion, actually terrible, because one doesn't spot personalities, people that actually have something new to say. They just repeat and repeat the same things. The other day, yesterday or so, someone from the younger generation, I saw as well on social media a clip saying, "I think it's a masterpiece." Well, listen, guy, this has been already said so many times. It is a masterpiece. You don't have to repeat that you think it's a masterpiece. If the personal element is that you say, "I think," well, that's a little bit too little, That's, So that's the thing. But then there's another thing, because I think it is so complex subject that led classical musicians to as well be in danger of, I'm talking here mostly about the younger generations, not staying in people's mind in some decade. It is sort of imposed by the business, the classical music business on them. And that's not the musician's fault necessarily.
And anyway, and then we are not even talking about a couple of decades in front, but also think 100 years in front or 150 years in front, none of the homogenized, standardized playing musicians will survive this time span that is much longer than a lifetime. Because exactly those pianists of whom...
Or musicians. Other ones.
Of whom we have records from the early 20th century, for example, they will stay because we luckily have caught their artistry, and they are so very different that they will survive the passage of time. While if 50 people play the same, they will not. As simple.
Again, this might be the reason why the fame as well, next to technology, is less and less, I wouldn't say important, but short-lasting.
Yes.
And playing is one thing, but I think it's already in the classical music business, this subject of standardized playing is so deep that one can spot it even in the contracts. And I say that out of experience as a person who've read, I don't know how many contracts in my life, but I can count in hundreds. And what was very worrisome when I saw in some contracts, but in one especially, what has been immediately then corrected, because I don't want such things, obviously. I find them dangerous as well for musicians. Obviously written by some lawyers, but still, you cannot write such things. One of the paragraphs saying that the artist is expected to play in a predictable way. This cannot be. This cannot happen. To have anything of this kind in any kind of contract of musicians. And I hope that younger musicians, if they read their own contracts, will be more alert when they read the contracts and will not allow to have such paragraphs.
And one big subject we haven't even opened yet, and that's AI and generative AI, which is learning from everything out there, everything we have created. Always, again, with the crude, or sort of crude, I say sort of because some are not so crude, but some are very crude, metrics of reading, or let's say digitizing the music, because only out of code the model can learn, and not out of sound as we know it. But nevertheless, it learns from all there is, and at some point it will just generate these things, and then in these algorithms that are delivering content to users, simply the AI might take over the artist's job, and those people who are consuming will not even mind, because it will still sound almost the same or nice in some way. And that's of course also not good for the topic of fame, right?
Well, it's not good for artists generally.
Yeah,
right.
but then,
and by the way, big platforms, of course, one would be naive or silly to think that they don't use the content, in that case music, posted by the users. They do use and they do analyze, and this is where a
but
problem
not only
is.
that, I mean, of course this is not something outrageous, I would say. For many people it will, but for these people that know, not at all. I mean, Uber was from the start meant to be a self-driving car app. Yes. And still uses humans to bridge until there are self-driving cars running it. So and with music streaming apps, it's probably something similar.
Not only music streaming apps, but the platforms that allow music content posts.
And another thing is also the whole blockchain movement, or the hashing era. Is also not to underestimate, because of course the kind of collaboration movement might also come. These are of course predictions that I don't know if they will come true, but they might.
Some people talk about that.
Yeah, that you can actually then track on the blockchain who did what, and you basically make collaborative content, which again is, I don't say that it cannot be nice, it can be very nice. But again, it's the fame as we know it will be affected by it, because it will be like...
It becomes very watery.
Yeah, who did it? And then an AI was in the team as well, and 2 humans or whatever, and then who made it? I mean, you know what I mean. So it's a difficult future for artists, but I think the more one knows, or the more possible outcomes one sort of can foresee, the better one is prepared for what one actually wants to do, and what is important for oneself, right?
That's right. There is another aspect, less technological, more simply human, that everyone wants to be famous. And there is this obsession with fame, with popularity. And of course, again, internet, so social media, create these opportunities for so-called influencers or celebrities or musicians who can as well earn. If you have a big follower space, you can earn on social media. And this influences, of course, the many younger people. So many younger people have this obsession with fame. Therefore, they look up to those who are popular. They often admire them for the wrong reasons. Not necessarily because these popular influencers are really great or have something special to offer, but because they are popular. And this popularity, or being famous, is also confused with being successful. So everyone wants that. It's very sexy. One cannot here forget that some of the most successful people, and by success I mean here economical success, because in the end everybody wants to have money. This is what it comes down to. So some of the most successful people economically are not known at all, or
and
not
you
known.
Don't want to be known.
And because you don't want to be famous, or you don't want to have this attention.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult subject.
So if one spins the trajectory we are currently on into the next years and put it to AI and AGI and everything that will come, one can ask oneself, is fame still a goal? I mean, or should fame still be a goal for musicians?
Well, they need that up to a point, because otherwise if you don't have some sort of fame or popularity, then you cannot earn your money. So this is...
That's right, but there was this concept of Kevin Kelly of 1,000 true fans. Mm-hmm. That sort of seems to have become more relevant than ever in nowadays times, because if you would have 1,000 really true fans, could be enough for a musician to do his craft in an authentic way, in a way, one would say. I'm just... Mm-hmm.
Yes, the fans is another subject, because since everyone saw and heard everything, it is really difficult to impress anybody. Even if one makes something outstanding, I would say, people tend to be resistant to its value, unless this gets popular or en vogue. Then it's much easier. But
but then it's not the actual
yes,
content.
it is not the actual. Yes,
the
but
packing.
the question
the
is the main question is if it's even possible to get these real devoted followers, fans, or however one calls them, in the times when we look at the phone 60 times a day without thinking.
That's true, and it's as so many times it's about awareness, because the spiritual layer I'm mentioning often is, of course,
not to be confused with religion, because that's important.
I mean, I just call it now spiritual layer in this episode. I mean, this is basically natural music making, or this is this sort of let's say Fibonacci code of music. But if it's there, then it's to reproduce, or it's to spot and to analyze, right? So it means even if people don't hear it, it's there. So, and I think it's these kind of real differences in harmonics, its timing, its volume, its timbre, and those things. If they come together in a right way, and if more people would actually spot it and develop this awareness of these fine grain things, then I think fame can come back slowly, because then people would say, wow, that was really profoundly different than the other thing, and so why should I go to this thing that I can have 50 copies of if I have a one,
But this is what the younger musicians, a bit younger than you and much younger, would have to be aware of,
yes,
in order to change anything. Otherwise, they will end up in an empty space.
Yes, because the fear, the pressures of actually being able to live as a musician nowadays, it's not so easy, and therefore it's hard to actually dare to make something different than the mainstream, because you think the mainstream
is right.
This
and
will
is how
bring
you do
me there,
it.
and it's actually wrong, because
you have copy-paste musicians, so you can be replaced easily as well.
Yes, and historic examples have shown that things that were rejected at first then all of a sudden became mainstream in a way, but then they were the only ones, and then they became super successful.
And now it's not the case, because there are way too much of the same.
Yes, by the way, in all genres. So
That's
it's not
true.
only classical.
And it's not only music.
Yes, absolutely. It's a sign of our times, unfortunately. But I think we humans have this wonderful ability of changing things.
Destroying and then rebuilding.
Yeah, but I think the change happens with a thought.
Yes.
It sounds so stupid, but it is actually this. It's the first thought that comes up and says, why not? It's this. And even if you consume, it's the same. Like, why not listen to this? Why And once you make this first step, I think the rest comes.
Would you actually have an advice for a bit younger than yourself musicians?
Well, it's difficult, because we all live in whatever this world is and try to find our spot and do the best we can. So also me included, who am I to give advice? Because...
but you live longer than those ones that are
right.
younger than you.
But the only advice I can give is exactly this, what I said, that it takes courage, and I think it's so be not afraid to have that courage to do whatever you feel is right, but question yourself first. So just don't do anything that you think is right, because then most likely, if you haven't thought about it long enough, you will probably be wrong. And then it's stupid to be to having the courage of doing the wrong thing. But once one questions to oneself enough, and you are sure you're right, just do it.
And don't just repeat everything what other people have already said. It's useless.
Exactly. Just do it and try to find explanations for your opinions. and then check these explanations and check if you're right. And if you're right and everybody else says you're wrong, still do it.
I will repeat here something that we have said already multiple times in this podcast.
And will still
and
say.
will. But in the end, it's all about awareness.
Yeah, well, as positive as I am, I think we live in great times to make change, because not only have we destroyed every possible thing you can destroy in art and music and everything, but that's good. I mean, it's not good that we do it, but it's good because it makes time for somewhat a new renaissance, or however you call it. And it's about awareness. And important is that listeners and artists both are aware that there is a system, whoever owns that system, I don't want to go there, but that system targets exactly our attention and our awareness, and it's set to, or the system wants us to have lower awareness, or low grain sensors, in order to be more controllable for them, because it's
more predictable.
Because with crude metrics, you can just, investors and all the people who make money with music and with other art can just much more reliably predict what our behavior will be, what our click rates will be, and how it can be converted into money. And the way out of this is simply awareness. The way out of this is simply to ramp up our sensors and listen to music and think like, wow, why is that like this? Why is this here? Why is that there? Why do I feel this? Why do I get goosebumps there? Why? All these questions. If you get aware of these things, then you can escape that system. And that would maybe make, again, real room for genuine, different artistry, like profoundly different artistry.
And personality and celebrity.
Exactly.
One of the definitions of celebrity is a celebrity is someone who is known for being known. And that would be the worst thing that could happen to musicians. Just that you're someone who is known for being known, and not for this what you're doing.
Especially in the world of AI and AGI that is to come.